So I'd like to thank you for joining me today. I love the play that goes on, so I'm excited to have you on.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, good to be here.
And so for the first part, can you please explain a little bit about yourself for those who don't know who you are?
So I'm Chris Lanceley. I currently play Chris Bean in the play that goes wrong. I joined the show when it moved off Broadway in 2019. I toured with the show as well just before COVID, but that got cut off with COVID, and then I returned off Broadway. I started playing the role of Jonathan. I moved into the role of Chris. I've also played the role of Robert from time to time. Um, yeah, and I love it. It's my favorite job that I've ever had.
That's awesome. I saw the show back in, I want to say 2021 when it was in Chicago.
Oh,
So
nice. I don't
yeah, it
think I
wasn't
was with it on that tour.
yeah, it wasn't the tour, but it was I think
Oh, that version. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, it was at the Playhouse. Yeah, so that was my first show I saw in Chicago, and I loved it. It was hilarious.
Great. Yeah, there's been some good cast members from that come over to off Broadway from time to time. We just had Caroline Chu, who was with the Chicago company, and a few others. I can't remember.
Yeah,
Been a
that's
lot of
awesome.
ins and
And
outs
so
over the years.
yeah, that's awesome. And so what was the audition process like for the play that goes wrong?
It was unlike any audition that I've ever done, and I think that's actually what helped me book it eventually. Because I'm not a good auditioner. I'm a very anxious auditioner, and um, I think as much about the things that can go wrong as the things that go right, which actually might have helped me for this job now that I realize it. But it started quite normally with a kind of pre-screen. I went in, there were two people in the room. I think the assistant director, the casting director, and just did a short scene of Jonathan because I was auditioning for Jonathan at the time. Um, I'd actually flown back early from the UK to make that audition. I was It was my holiday vacation back home, and I got the audition. I flew back to the US. I think the day before the audition, showed up quite jet lagged, and did that first pre-screen. Was very excited for it. And then I think a few days later, they invited me back to the final callbacks, which is the part that was unlike anything that I've ever done in an audition room before. There were about three or four people for each role, all called together into one huge audition. We did kind of theatre games and to warm up, and then we were all sent off into little groups with scenes, and then we'd all do those scenes back to back. So you would watch all the other people that were auditioning for the same role as you do their scene in front of you, and then you would take your opportunity to do the scene after that. And I think the reason that kind of helped me in particular was because it just kind of shed all of that stress and anxiety of performing as an individual in a room in front of people, and it being 30 seconds that they get to see when you walk into a room and when you walk out. For this, it was kind of a 4 hour process that they watched us work with different groups of people, and obviously the scenes that we ended up doing as well. And I think they were looking as much for the performances. They were looking as much for the personalities as the performances, I think, because they built a group of people that are collaborative and work well together and roll with the punches. And that's all the group that showed up day one of performances. And I think that 4 hours of rehearsal allowed them to see not just the performances, but the personalities and how they would kind of come together. I think it's important with a show like this that it's a good, strong ensemble.
Yeah, that's
And the
great.
audition process brings that out.
Yeah, for sure, especially with it being 4 hours long. That's awesome. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
and so what got you into theater?
Um, I think I had no interest in theatre until I was about 9 or 10, and I think my school posted an audition notice saying, I remember it actually. It said, "This is the school play. Would you like not many lines, medium amount of lines, or lots of lines?" And I said, "Not very many lines." And I ended up getting in the play, loving being on stage, loving rehearsals and getting direction and all of that. And after that, I auditioned for every single play in school, and went to see as many as I could. I grew up in Liverpool, so I went to the Liverpool Empire a lot. The Playhouse, all the different places around Liverpool that I could go and see theatre, I went to. Um, it just kind of came from there. But it originated, I suppose, from loving being on stage as much as I did in that first show that I did.
That's awesome. And so, when was your first interaction with Mischief Theater? Was the play that goes on the first time you've interacted with them?
Yeah, it was. It was a really good introduction, actually. Um, the first thing I saw, I mean, I should say I live in New York City and I tend to avoid the shows that I could see in the West End. So, if I'm home in the UK or if I'm in London and the shows that are in New York, I'll often choose to see them there. So I hadn't seen the play that goes wrong yet. My first introduction was the video of the Royal Variety performance. If you've seen that,
Like the
it's
nine
kind of
minute
a
clip?
yeah.
Yeah.
So when I got the audition, that was my first introduction really to Mischief. I watched it with my dad. I've got an audition for this. Let's watch the video, and we were just howling, laughing at it, and we loved it. And then that audition, I recall the three writers as we walked into the room. The three writers were all there, shaking our hands, welcoming us. Thank you for coming. It was such a warm, open, welcome environment. Plus the fact that the audition process was so kind of forgiving in a way, and did want to see you and your personality. It was like a really nice way to be introduced to what Mischief Theatre is and who they are and what they stand for and what they like to put across with their theatre and how they like to treat their actors and crew and all of that too.
Yeah, that's great. And so it must have been pretty cool after seeing the 9 minute clip and then going into the audition room and seeing the people you saw in the video be in
Yeah.
that room with you.
Yeah, that was really cool, and usually would be quite intimidating to me because I'm not good when I see someone I've seen on stage or on TV and I meet them in person. I'm usually a little starstruck, but they were just so warm and open that it didn't matter. None of that mattered.
Yeah, that's great. And the good thing about Play That Goes Wrong is that if you mess up during the audition, you can just play it off because everything goes wrong in the show.
Yeah,
So, like, that's the good thing about this audition. You can just play it off if something goes wrong.
totally. Yeah,
And
yeah.
so, talking about things that go wrong, what are some safety precautions you have to take to make sure this show runs smoothly? Because there are things that go wrong, but you also want to make sure it's safe since there's so many things
Hmm.
going wrong.
Yeah, there's kind of I put that in two camps really. There's the precautions you can take as an individual, and then there's the precautions that the show takes as well. I'm actually, you notice I have a beard at the moment. I'm out with an injury because I got hurt doing the show, and that will happen occasionally. It's a dangerous piece of theatre, and even if you do everything perfectly, completely correct, something can happen. You can slip and you can hurt yourself, which is what happened to me. So to mitigate that, and by the way, I'm back in like 2 weeks. I'm very excited. Um, to mitigate that, I'm a long warm up, and that's what I'm really thinking about at the moment. I've hurt my lower back, so I'm going to probably be doing about an hour of stretches and strengthening before every performance, including the vocal stuff as well, because it's very easy to blow your voice out in this show if you're not careful and you don't warm up correctly. But a lot of us are out there in the house before the audience comes in, warming up, getting our voices ready, getting our bodies ready. And I noticed that the moment I start to get lazy with that, and I show up 15 minutes to warm up, that's when I start getting hurt, and that's when I start getting tired. So it's so important to have that long warm up and not feel pressured to finish that in any short stretch of time. But within the show itself, I mean, you should see the amount of cameras we have backstage for the stage manager to look at the stage and make sure we are stood in the correct position, or make sure a set piece is set up accurately and correctly for whatever to happen. The stage managers are always looking at that kind of thing to make sure it's okay to continue the show with certain stunts that will happen. We have a stunt coordinator come in who looks specifically at a lot of the falls and a lot of the moments and how to make sure that they are safe, not just to do once, but to do 8 times a week, week after week. Because there are things that you can do once and it feels fine, and then all of a sudden it kind of deteriorates as time goes on. We also have contingencies within the show, and we will rehearse these. We'll come in, do a 4-hour rehearsal in an afternoon, and we rehearse what will happen if certain things don't happen, because there are technical elements in the show, as you're aware, and things are supposed to happen with the set. and we come in and rehearse alternative scenes and alternative endings for if those things do not happen. There's also situations where the stage manager might decide that it's not safe to do a certain set piece. So then we know how to proceed from there. People aren't scrambling on stage, and that's when you're liable to get hurt, is when you're kind of panicking a little bit and like, what now, what now, what now? So we try and prepare as much as possible.
That's awesome. And so I know it's not an easy show either, because for one, of all the things going on stage, but two, there's also a pretend stage manager on the top of the stage as well.
Yeah.
He's also, so they're trying to line it up too with the stage manager and Trevor. It's crazy how much it lines up.
Yeah.
And so obviously there's a lot of audience interaction too in the show. What is your favorite moment in the show?
I mean, for me, it's playing Chris Bean. It would be the ledger bit, as it's often referred to, as my character loses a prop, and the audience knows exactly where it is. So as my character searches for the prop, the goal is for the audience to help him out. My character does not like that. He does not like when the audience interacts with him or talks to him, because it's a very serious murder mystery. I'd say that's my favorite part of the show, because it's improvised, because anything can happen, because it takes a bit of finesse, and it's a real, it's a work of, not a work of art. It's a bit dramatic. It's something that I can work on and improve and always keep changing, and is never going to quite be the same. It's something that I have to be on my toes for. That's what I love about it. People often ask us, like, how do you, I hope I'm not like stealing a question from later on, but when you're doing 8 shows a week after week, how do you keep it fresh and unique and interesting? And our answer is often, well, we have a new cast member in a different audience every night, because every audience behaves differently. But how they behave is very important for our characters, and no more so in that bit with the ledger where I directly interact with the audience. So that's what helps to keep the show exciting and interesting and unique for me every single night. Yeah.
I mean, that's also cool, because I mean, not cool in the way, but there's some senses where the audience might not interact, and you're just on stage trying to get them to interact, but they won't.
Yeah.
And so that's also a crazy way to play into that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you mentioned you on tour with The Play That Goes Wrong as well. And I know that played big theaters, and New World Stages is not a big theater at all. It's pretty intimate. And so do you prefer being on a big stage with The Play That Goes Wrong in a big house, or prefer New World Stage where it's a more intimate venue?
I think I prefer off Broadway. I think I prefer that New World Stages house for this show specifically, because it's more believable to me that the Cornby University Theatre Society will have rented out this small space, this kind of black box. It's more believable from a storytelling standpoint that they would have this space, but also it's easier to tell our story in that space, because the reality of performing a show, which is what their reality is, they're trying their very best to perform this murder mystery, and it just keeps going wrong, but they're desperately trying to continue. The nature of that in reality is that the responses from the actors on stage would be fairly subtle. It might be a little look of panic, or a twitch, or a look with the eyes, which is much harder to do in front of 3,000 people than it is in front of 300 people. And I think the real comedy and joy from this show comes when the actors in The Murder at Havisham Manor, the actors in this pretend murder mystery, are trying to do it as sincerely and as honestly and as genuinely as they possibly can, but things keep going wrong. And the moment you start to kind of make things a little bigger and kind of play up the comedy of each moment is when you lose the comedy of the moment. So in front of a larger house, there's a really tough and delicate balance of building up and enhancing those moments while also not making them false or fake. And sometimes you have to make a compromise. So to me, the pure distilled, honest, truthful, perfect version of the show can be done in a slightly smaller space where an audience can see just a little straying of the eyes or a slightly clenched jaw or whatever, and it allows you to play the show more honestly.
Yeah, I would prefer that too because when I saw the show back in 2021, it was at the Broadway Playhouse in Chicago, and it's a one story, I want to say 300 seater, about the size of
Yeah,
New World stages, and I was right in the front row. So as things were going on, I could see each thing individually. Uh,
perfect.
it's awesome, yeah. And then you could see Trevor up there, and you would just be turning your head and trying to figure out which one
Yeah.
to look at because they're both awesome.
And you hit on something there as well, that a lot of people come back to see our show over and over and over and over again. And I think a lot of it is because of those little subtle reactions. You might see Chris Bean do one thing, but then Trevor's doing another thing, and Annie's doing something else over there while Sandra rolls her eyes. And you can only really catch one of them or a couple of them at a time. So, so yeah, people tend to come back and, oh, I never saw that before. Oh, I didn't know he did that, which is just such a joy.
And there's so many details in this set as well. It's not a small set. There's so many like details of things that like even subtle things go wrong. Like something might tip over, something might do something else, and you don't notice it until you see it again.
Yeah, totally. I mean, the set won a Tony, so
Yeah.
it's the only thing. The only one of us that has a Tony is the set that probably has the biggest ego of all of us. So yeah, and it puts in an incredible performance every night
Yeah.
with the help of some very talented crew members standing behind those flats too.
So how many crew members are backstage during the show?
Let me say, there's two stage managers, two props. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 on deck, I think. 1 up in the lighting booth and 2 in wardrobe.
Oh wow. So so it's like a whole team then, like a
Oh
huge
yeah,
team backstage.
yeah, yeah. There's I mean, people are kind of assigned to specific jobs. Obviously, there's a couple for props, 1 on each side of the deck of the stage. There's a guy who is his main job is the automation, anything on the set that moves, that is big and everything, which is good that there's someone specifically on that because those bits are dangerous. And then there's another person who kind of supports that person and floats around. And I'm hopefully not offending anyone by diminishing the job title, but
Yeah,
I
that's
mean, equally,
awesome.
I'm an actor, their crew, and I don't want to step on their toes, and I want to know what they do, but I don't want to get in their way either. So I think that's
Yeah.
my excuse for not fully knowing exactly what everyone's doing at all times.
Yeah, and so what advice would you give to your younger self?
Um, oh man, that's a tough question. Because I'd say I've had a difficult journey to where I am today. But also I wouldn't change it necessarily, if that makes sense. I think the difficult things that happen as you go through your career, things in life, things like family members getting unwell and stuff like that. I think that might be the advice: is just to be more open and accepting of everything that comes your way, be it negative, be it positive, whatever, because it all rounds out an actor. In the end, I didn't realize how important being challenged in life would be. And obviously we're all naturally resistant to things like that as well. But yeah, I think I would just tell myself to worry less, to be open to things more, and to be, because I am, but to be as positive as you can about as many things as you can be. Yeah, even if they seem negative on the face of it, there's I think most negative things that happen, you can come back and find positives in it later. Yeah, that's probably not the best answer. I'm thinking
That's all right.
specifically to my situation. Um, yeah, and I think I'm being quite cryptic, and it sounds like I've had terrible, terrible things happen to me, but that's
That's
not
all
that's
right.
not what I'm trying to say. I think so many things can be formative and important, and yeah, Anyway,
Yeah,
he,
yeah, that's great. And
that's
so that wraps up the question portion. And I have a play that goes on script right here. And it's from the original production, so I don't know how much has changed from the Broadway. And we're gonna do a little guess the line or finish the line from the
oh,
show.
I love it. I love this. Okay, great.
And so I don't know how much has changed from the Broadway version. This is from the original London production. So
I'll do my best.
and so this one is from the beginning of the show, and I'll give you the starting of your line, and then you'll just have to finish and do the next few sentences.
Oh, fun. We do this
So
with our understudies in the show sometimes, where yeah, they'll do it with us. Actually, they'll start a line and then we'll have to figure out where it is in the show and finish it off.
that's hilarious. And so you start with good evening, ladies.
And gentlemen, although we've changed that to everyone to be more inclusive now. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Cornell University, Cornell Polytechnic, in that probably Cornell University Drama Society's presentation of The Murder at Havisham Manor. Please allow me to introduce myself. I'm Chris Bean, the director, as Henry Shields does it. Yeah,
And that's
I
awesome.
could go on.
And I got it. Yep. And so this is a little more into that monologue, and it says we had a presentation of Vinyl Dolls' classic James and the Peach. Of course.
Oh no. Wait, can you repeat that, please?
Yes. We had a presentation of Vinyl Dolls' classic James and the Peach. Of course.
Oh, that one has changed. That one's changed, sadly.
It's of course in the run of the show we had a particular one where the peach ran off the stage. And then it talks about James, different. Where's your peach?
No, that's completely different now. Let me think what that is. James, I think it's James. Where's your peach? James
that's
and the peach. James and the peach. That's what it is.
James and the peach.
I can't remember now. It's odd with that speech in particular. If I try and pluck something out of it, because it's like, out of the cadence,
it's crazy because like you're trying to figure out what you say next, and you're like, I do this 8 times a week usually, and I can't think of it in 1 minute. Like
in isolation, yeah, it's gone.
Yeah, that's hilarious. And so
I've got 2 weeks until I have to know it perfectly.
And so this one is towards the middle of Act 1, I want to say, and you open the door and say, "I'm sorry to have kept you.
But now that I have finished examining the body, our interviews can proceed. Perkins, bring in Charles's personal effects."
Yes.
There we go. Being hit by a shield in the middle of it, of course, in the face.
And so this one is also in Act 1, and you say, let's see, I'd posted notes, and now I'm trying to find where I was trying to post it. Okay, Dennis says, "Of course, Inspector."
And what scene is this in? This is Act 2, you said?
Act 1.
Act 1. Oh, that's hard. Of course, Inspector. That is...
I want to say it's towards the end of Act 1.
Towards the end of Act 1. Perkins, pour us all a stiff drink. Pour us all another scotch. Is that right? Of course, Inspector. Now... Is it now?
It's now. Tell me, is anyone...
Now tell me, is there anyone... Oh, it's during the loop section, isn't it?
Yes.
Now tell me, is there any... Now tell me, is there anyone other than... Now tell me, is there something about someone being in the grounds? Is there anyone...
It's close. It's now tell me, is there anyone else that you know of in the grounds other than the four of us?
Other than yourself. Other than the four, that's the one. Okay, good. And that repeats 5 times, so I really should get that one.
And when you're drinking that stuff on stage, is it water?
Yeah, it's water.
It's water, yeah.
Yeah, thankfully.
Because when I was watching in Chicago, I was cracking up at that scene. Like that was one of the funniest moments. Like my chest was hurting from how much I was laughing. It was hilarious.
It's great. That's one of my favorite parts to do as well, because there's such finesse to getting to do that same section 5 times over and over and over again and still make it funny.
Yeah. And so this is your monologue from Act 2 at the beginning. Once again, it's probably changed a little bit. You say, obviously, I'd be lying if I said the first act went entirely as rehearsed. There were 1 or 2 minor snags
that you may or may not have picked up on, but those are snags that you would expect to see in any production.
Yes.
Oh, there's something after that as well, but yeah, I can't remember.
Any production. It's any production. This is
Any
obviously
production.
not the first mess up you've seen in Cornley
Ah,
production.
that's changed for ours. Yeah, those two speeches in particular, I think, have changed quite a bit from the that version to ours.
Yes. And so this Robert says, "What is it, Inspector?"
Oh, I know this bit. Um, oh, study to lounge you there, Collymore. What what is it, Inspector? I can do the line before it, but not what is it, Inspector? Something like come up to the study immediately. I must speak with you.
It's
Uh,
a new it
a
says a
new
new draft of Charles' last will and testament dated only today.
Oh, that's in the scene slightly. A new draft of Charles's. What is it, Inspector? A new draft of Charles's last will and testament dated only today. Let me see. Yeah. Anyway, yes,
Yes, that
that's.
was it. Yes.
I got the same section of the show. That's it's funny that section. There's I think there's a few what is it inspectors or and things like that. There's lines that repeat throughout the show, which makes it incredibly challenging.
Yeah, because you could be at one moment in the show and then you accidentally say something that comes out another part, but after the same line.
Yeah, yeah. And there's lots of Collymores and Thomas, and the names change throughout. Inspector
Yeah.
Carter. Mm.
And so this one, Dennis says 99 years.
99. Oh, 90. Although I correct him to
You say 9, and then he says
99
99.
years, and then I address Max, Arthur the gardener. I'm seeing myself on stage right now. I can 9 years. I can't remember. I address Arthur the gardener, and I tell him something.
Yeah, so you're talking, he
Can I have the
says,
first word?
uh, you say 99 years, what
99 years. What a dedicated man. There it is. All right. So I don't turn to Max yet. I give him more. All right. 99 years. What a dedicated man. Now, Arthur, I was informed that you had left the grounds at 6 o'clock today. Something like that.
Yep, that's it, yep.
Ah, man, that's one of my favorite lines. All right. What you're telling me, what you're teaching me is that I need to look at the script a bit more before I go back in 2 weeks.
And so, Max says Florence Collymore is the murder inspector.
Me, the murderer? How could you? That's her line, isn't it? Florence
You say
Collymore is.
you are the murderer.
You are the murderer, Miss Collymore. It's plain for us all to see. You're engaged to be married to Charles, a man who, according to your letter, you despise. Not only that, you're having an affair with his brother. It seems plausible to me that you both killed him so you could be together.
That is correct.
That's actually that line is under absolute chaos that's happening, and I don't think anyone in the audience can really actually hear that line being delivered, and it very rarely gets finished. But I pride myself on knowing that one all the way to the end, regardless of the fact that no Bean really gets to finish it.
That's hilarious. And so this one is after Annie stands up in the window. Max says, "It was not her, Inspector. Besides, the figure I saw was that of a man."
Of course it was. Of course it was. You no. Of course it was. You were engaged to be married to Charles. No. It's of course it was. I crossed to Max downstage left. Of course it was. Can I have the next? Of
Yeah,
course
it
it
says,
was.
"Of course it was.
That's what I thought.
You were taken."
You were taken in by a handkerchief planted outside the window to frame Florence. She and Cecil both have plausible motives for murder, but the true motive belonged to.
Yes.
Yes.
And so, let's see. Okay, this one is a Robert line. So let's see if how much you
Ooh,
remember
let's
of
see how my
Robert.
memory is of that.
And so Chris says Thomas Collymore, and then Robert comes to the door. Yes.
track.
And so that part was correct. But just so the people at home, that part will be bleeped because that is a little spoiler.
Oh, brilliant. Good. Thank
And
you.
so that part will be bleeped, but you did
Maybe
get
I
it correct.
cursed though. I don't know. That's ambiguous.
Yeah. And so the final one is also a Bob. No, this one is a Chris line.
Okay.
Bobbit says, "Get out of my way, Charles."
Get out of my way, Jeff. Oh, this bit. This is another moment that's all about the physical rather than the. Get out of my way, Charles. Oh, get out of my way, Charles. Oh, I can see myself sliding down the thing.
The first word
Um,
is push him.
Push him aside, Colin Moore. Do you want to spend the rest of your life in jail? Thank you very much.
Yes.
There it is.
And
It's
so that
so much of the show is associated with physical action that it's challenging to take it out of it, but a really good exercise.
and if you
That's a
forget
lot of
that
fun.
one thing falls or one thing moves, you could be injured like
Yeah,
big time.
yeah.
And so it's also, like you said, a very physical show too.
Yeah.
And so that wraps up the interview. I'd like to thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. This has been a lot of fun.
It has